Hello, today I'm gonna do my June wrap-up. Basically only do wrap-ups on my channel now because consistency, I don't know what that is. Here are some stats. I read 20 books in the month of June. Let's get into it. The first book I read was The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, which is the first book in the Feminine Pursuits trilogy. This is a historical romance FF trilogy series. We have our first heroine whose father recently died and she's trying to look for work, and she comes across this letter of the other heroine asking for a translator of the French text, and this second heroine has recently lost her husband, and so she appreciates the company of our first heroine, and it's their love story. The themes of the book are very much feminist because of course we have a female translator for this French text, so that's the plot. I really liked it. This one does have an insta-love kind of thing, instant attraction. They get together very quickly, which obviously I don't like literally 99% of the time, but I didn't mind it in this one because I don't know, I just really like them together, and there wasn't a lot of difficult conflict that was annoying me within their relationship, except of course for the third act breakup, but that always happens, it's inevitable. And there's low-key a plot twist that actually surprised me. It was kind of fun, so I gave this one 4 stars. And then I read the second one, The Care and Feeding of Waspish Widows, which is such a hard one for me to say. But our first heroine is somebody that we saw in the first book. She's a printer. She works at a printing press, I think. She has this bee problem in one of her warehouses, and she calls our second heroine, who's a beekeeper, to fix it. And I'm pretty sure they I don't know, they get kind of caught in this political mess where they keep seeing each other and they become acquaintances of sorts. The plot in this one is very politically based, which was really interesting, but it was kind of hard for me to follow along, especially because I was listening to it and I was doing a lot of other stuff while I was listening to it. But this one's a slow burn romance, obviously something of my preference, and it's Grumpy X Sunshine, and I really liked both of the heroines. They work so well together, and like I said, the plot itself was really interesting, so I ended up giving this one a 4.25. And then I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which is the first book in the Wayfarer series. It's actually quite large for a kind of contemporary sci-fi novel. It's 440-ish pages, but this was a 5-star read. This is BookTube's darling. This book specifically is about the Wayfarer crew, and they've just gotten a new crew member, Rosemary Harper, who's trying to escape her past and sorts, so she joins this crew and they end up getting this really big mission and have to journey across the galaxy to complete it, to do their job, okay? And it's such a good book. When I think about this, I don't really have any flaws to talk about. Maybe because it's been a while, so I can't really remember anything, but there's just a moment, I was a third into the book, and it was just this moment of me realizing that this is a 5-star read. I love the writing, it's very smart, and it talks about themes in kind of a both implicit and explicit way that works really well. The characters are fantastic. Obviously this is a character-based book, and the plot isn't really that important. It's about the characters, and that's what Becky Chambers writes about, and because of that, and because she knows how to do that, it's perfect. It's literally, I'm obsessed with all the characters. All of them have so much depth, and I love the way that we learned about each of them, because the format that this book takes is, it's just a random day of their journey and all of these crazy events that they experience, and so we get to learn about the characters through these events, and I love it so much. And the ending made me so emo. Ugh. I love this book so much. It was so good. And then I read Saga Book 2. I read this one in one sitting. Whatever. Saga is just this kind of Romeo and Juliet retelling, sci-fi retelling, where two people that aren't supposed to fall in love do. They have a child and they're escaping all of these people that are trying to hunt them down, and we kind of learn about all these people, but also of course the main characters, and it's just a really fun series. The second one was way more explicit than the first one. It was way more gorier too, but that's kind of what I meant. It was more gorier. And I honestly didn't love these volumes as much as I loved the first 3, but it was still a fun time. And then I read The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This is the first book in the Burning Kingdoms series, and this one was an arc. And this is kind of like a revolution fantasy. We have an emperor who is a dictator. He abuses his ideas of religion to hurt people, to like get the way that he wants. Women are very much oppressed in this society, and poor people as well, and it's just like really bad. And our main characters, Priya and Malini, Priya specifically though, they kind of get caught up in this rebellion versus the empire thing, because Malini is a princess and there's this whole plot going on with them. But yeah, they just get caught up in all these politics, and this is about like a whole lot of things, but especially like them and the role that they play, and specifically the role that all of the women play, because there's 3 perspectives that we get from, no, there's 3 female perspectives that we get, and each of them are just like very different and distinct, but they very much are like showing that this is supposed to be a feminist book, and I love it. I give it 5 stars. It was great. I kind of rated it based off of the quality of the book versus the experience, because I was still in my fantasy slump. So reading a slow burn fantasy, because that's what this is, it was a little rough at the beginning, but once it kind of got into the story and once Malini and Priya actually met, things were getting interesting. I really liked the fantasy. I liked the world. I liked the politics again. I'm a political fantasy girl. It's really interesting because we kind of get to see 2 rebellions. We see like this one where this guy clearly has selfish motivations, and we see these other people who are more motivated for the better of the people. And it kind of gets you thinking like, okay, well, you agree with what this guy is saying, but he's doing bad stuff too that like doesn't really counter what he's trying to fight for. Some of the characters in here were genuinely terrifying, like the leader of this rebellion, for example, and Malini. Malini is a scary girl, okay? And I love Priya. I love her internal monologue. And then I read the Spectre Inspectors comics 1 to 4. There's gonna be 5, and I think it's only gonna be like 1 graphic novel or like 1 comic. I don't know what you would call it, but the issues. Oh, I read the 4 issues. There you go. There's the word. But the best way I could describe this is a queer Scooby-Doo story. Like if all the characters were gay and one of the people in the group gets possessed and they have to like get this demon out of her. So it's really fun, and I love, love, love the art style. And I love the story itself and like the whole concept of like a queer Scooby-Doo. It's just really fun. And I need to read the last issue, which I think comes out today. Today's the 30th. Then I read A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the 2nd book in the Wayfarer series. And this one is about Lovelace and Pepper, who are characters we saw in the first book, and their kind of story. And this one's like a little less exciting than the first one because they're not like on a space adventure or anything, which is why I waited a couple books to read it, because I was like so in the headspace of how good this book was that I needed to like make sure I was in the right headspace so I didn't criticize this based off of this book. This one I actually really liked too. I mean, obviously, honestly, it wasn't like a 5-star for me. I think I gave it a 4.25. I did really like the characters again. Becky Chambers knows how to write characters. She knows how to do a character-based book. And I love the parallel structure of showing Pepper and her history in comparison to how Lovelace is dealing with her new situation. I love parallel structures. I will consume it every single time. It's such a good writing technique. I love it so much. Then I read Record of a Spaceborne Few, which is the 3rd book in the Wayfarer series. This one is like, this one's like literal no plot. Like there is no plot to this book. If you haven't gotten the memo and you just like character-based books, then yeah, this series is for you, and the more you go on in the series, the less plot there gets. But this is about, what was that colony called? The place? The Exodus Fleet, yeah. which is where Ashley is from the first book. Ashby, that's his name, Ashby. And so, I don't know, each book kind of has to have a connection to the first book, but the Exodus fleet is the fleet that took the last humans from Earth, I think, and took them into space to survive, but a lot of people didn't leave, and they kind of just stayed on the fleet. And so it's the only place in the universe where only humans live, and where they kind of still live like a little bit traditionally, very much like kept away from all the crazy alien science fiction-ish stuff. And so they live in this society where everything is shared, or kind of like people are very caring of other people, and everyone's equal. We follow like 6 different people on this fleet, and we just see them live their lives. There's like no plot to it. And unfortunately, it did fall a little flat for me. I gave it a 3.75, but mainly because I didn't care about like 4 out of 6 of the perspectives. The only people I was interested in was Sawyer and that other guy, the kid, Kip. Sawyer and Kip. They're really interesting characters. Becky Chambers does this thing where things that don't seem to relate connect somehow, at least like 75% in. So even though these are very separate characters with very separate lives, they do have a connection in some way, and they do end up like crossing paths, which is like an interesting thing, and I liked seeing that. And I don't know, I liked being in the Exodus fleet because it just felt like very homey. But besides that, I was kind of just feeling okay about this. And then I was feeling some historical fiction mysteries, so I read The Body at the Tower by Y.S. Lee. Sorry, I thought it was The Body in the Tower, and I was like, did I just get that title wrong? Oh god, this book doesn't smell like cigarette smoke that badly anymore. I got this secondhand, and even though it's like a really nice, like, I don't know, used book, it smells like cigarette smoke, but not as badly as it did before. I literally had to like wear a mask for the first half of reading this book. Anyways, this is the second book in the Agency series, which is a series that follows Mary Quinn as she has just been recruited into this all-female spy agency, and by these very obvious lesbians, but the author is too afraid to say it. She's too afraid. Have I seen a man in sight within these women? No. Do they have a great connection? Yes. So just admit that they're lesbians, that they're in love, okay? They literally fight like a married couple. They literally fight like a married couple. It's actually hilarious. Anyways, the first one was like a political mystery. This one is still like a little bit of politics involved, but this one's more about a murder mystery. So the series also has like a slow burn romance, if that interests you. Low-key like hate to love, but there's a little bit of a power imbalance, so I don't know. I'm not like too into it because the guy is kind of a jerk, kind of like not understanding, and he's a tease in a way that's just like really obnoxious and annoying. Whatever, not the point. The book itself I thought was cute. I did like it a little bit less than the first one, because I didn't really feel like a lot of stuff was explained that needed to be explained, and it was just kind of happening, like we're here, right? And then of course we have the grand finale of the confrontation, but it was just like paced really weirdly. And the relationship between our main couple is really weird in this one too. Again, that's just because I don't really like the guy, so I'm gonna say that. I liked it better in the first book when they hated each other more. I don't really go into these books expecting like literature. These type of books, like historical fiction mysteries, are just meant to be like fillers. Like, I need to take a break from these intense, thematically based books. And so on that note, it was cute. I really liked it. And the ending made me immediately want to pick up the third book. Why do my historical fiction mysteries keep doing this to me? I read Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. This is the 4th book in the Fablehaven series by Brandon Muir, and I think it is not known enough that this is like one of my favorite series in terms of like, I don't know. It's just fun. It's a fun series. And I just was in I was in a really fat mood to read this, so I did. And this is just a series about who? Who did I say? Not Brendan. Kendra and Seth, who in the first book go to their grandparents' house, who they don't really know. And they end up finding out that their grandparents are the keepers of the sanctuary called Fablehaven, which protects mythical creatures from the world, but then also the world from mythical creatures. And they end up getting into this battle with the Society of the Evening Star, which wants to gather all the artifacts on these sanctuaries to unleash the demons from the demon prison. So this whole series is just a race versus like the Society of the Evening Star versus our main cast of characters as they're trying to get the artifacts before the other person. And it's really fun. It's really easy. Not the most up-to-date. I do have like a lot of problems with the way things are described sometimes, and particularly like some tropes that are used, like the magical healing trope. Liked this one a lot. I gave it a 4.5. Yeah. It was just really good. I'm forgetting what this one's about, and I just read it the other week. The other books were kind of getting into a repetitious cycle of the plot structure, and I was kind of low-key over it by the third book. And so I was like, okay, so is this the same structure we're going to take for the fourth book too until we get to the finale? But this one actually does change the structure and is really unique to the other books, so that's good. He like freshened up the series. Cute ending too. It made me want to immediately pick up the last one. And then I read something with a completely different tone. I read Plain Bad Heroine by Emily M. Danforth, and it has illustrations by Sarah Lotman. The illustrations are really nice, but the way I can describe this book is that it is a story within a story. I'm obsessed with books like that, okay? We have a narrator kind of in the style of like a 19th century novel, and they're a narrator that asks us to trust them and how they literally know everything that happened between these two stories they get. But first they tell us the story in the past at this boarding school of how the death of these two girls that were part of this like plain bad heroine society led to literally the most destructive events that ever took place at that school. And then in present day we follow these group of girls, our three main heroines, who are involved in this movie that is being filmed about those events. And specifically the movie is about the two girls, which I wanted to mention because I thought it was interesting. This is like minorly, like, don't think you're gonna get any like society cult stuff or whatever, but like I just want to warn you, it's not so much about the girls. They are more so, or we're led to believe that they're more so the Kickstarter for all these other events that happened with the adults at that school. And I just found it interesting through most of the book that the movie is based off of the girls, even though the girls are the most irrelevant part of that whole plot that happens in the past. But then I read a comment online about how the movie was probably made to be about the girls in terms of like the writing of the story, because we were learning about the events in the past, so it would have been repetitious. It would have been like, yeah, repetitious, is that the right word? It would have been too repetitive to just make a movie that's accurate to what actually happened. And I really like that. I don't know. This was just like a really good book. I understand why people don't like it because not much happens. I mean, you kind of, in present day, you just see these heroines existing and how they're like affecting other people, and then there's just like this weird Twilight Zone thing going on with the bees. Excuse me, not the bees, the yellow jackets. The past storyline was definitely more interesting. The past storyline, I was into the plot. The current storyline, I was into the characters, and I just wanted to see how they were gonna like develop and what their relationship was gonna be. It was very obvious that there's like some poly stuff that was gonna happen, and I was like, yes, yes, give us the poly sapphic representation that we need. So there's that. I really like the writing. I love narrators who are just there. They're kind of just like, we don't know who they are, but they're there. Okay, it was a very good way of telling the story because I like being addressed as the reader. God, I'm gonna have like an hour worth of footage talking about these books because I'm obsessed with everything I read this month. naturally, I was in the zone, so I read Keys to the Demon Prison, which is the 5th and final book in the Fablehaven series. Yes, I actually gave this one the same rating as this one, so I gave it a 4.5. Mainly has to do with like the general like ending of it. I was very confused because it ended very abruptly, and I thought there was going to be a little bit more, but it just kind of ended. And I'm not that disappointed because I know there's a whole other sequel series that's literally gonna be on its 5th book this year, but it was a little abrupt and it was a little slow in some parts. Besides that though, great ending. Great ending. We get some redemption arcs. Okay, the group all together, they're all going on this death mission. It was a good finale. It was a good finale. I read Darling by Kay Ingram. Screaming about this book on my Twitter too. Yeah, I gave it 5 stars. Okay. All you need to know about this book is that it is fast-paced, it is set in one night, and it is a chapter-by-chapter retelling of Peter Pan. This book, oh my god. Okay, have you ever read a book that genuinely made you feel anxious? Yeah. This is that book. I was stressed out the entire time. I was stressed out. I wasn't mad at the main character though, because I don't know if this is kind of like a hot take or whatever, but I don't blame her for leaving with Peter Pan, okay? With Peter. There's this kind of mindset that like strict parent kids have, that they kind of have to take the opportunities that they do have to have fun when their parents aren't around. And so I kind of understand, because Peter was also very like vulnerable, and she saw a girl there. And she wanted to go to a party, and she was upset with her parents. So I understand why she left. So I was never, ever, ever, ever frustrated with Wendy. I quite liked Wendy as a main character because she's kind of passive a little bit, which is usually annoying to me. I don't like, not Mary Sue per se, but like kind of just characters for the reader's eyes. But I really liked Wendy as a character. All of the characters in this book are like really interesting and unique, and it's one of my favorite parts. But I also just liked how fast-paced and anxious this made me, because literally, like, I don't know, like right away as soon as she leaves the house, we know that something's wrong. And so there's just this lingering thoughts of you knowing something bad's gonna happen at the end of the road, at the trail of the adventure, and she can't get out of it at all, or she's gonna like get hurt herself, and it's insane. And the reveal actually took me out. I wish I had a camera of me reading the reveal of that one specific line, because I was ended by that line alone. I literally wanted to cry. I was gagging, but like in a bad way. I wanted to throw up. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting anxious right now thinking about it. It was such a good book. It was such a good book. And I feel comfortable recommending this one because there's not like a lot of like content warnings. It's just, it was so good. You need to read this. You need to read this. If you're going to take any recommendation off of this, let Darling be one of them, okay? I read another dark romance, FF Dark Romance, Vibe by Liza James, which is a book that I found just through the author's promotion on Book Talk, which was really cool. I like finding books from the authors themselves. But this is about two girls, obviously. Sorry, I'm just like trying to figure out what I want to say. Our first heroine is Aura. I remember their names because I just read the second book. Okay, yeah, Aura. Aura had escaped from a cult like 9 years ago, and now she's living a very heteronormative life with her boyfriend, and she has this one other really close friend. And one night they go to the club, and she instantly falls in love with one of the dancers, who is Ruby. Now Ruby has a past of her own, and when she sees Aura, she instantly has this kind of vibe, this kind of energy that she's never felt with anyone else, and she quickly becomes obsessed with winning the affection of Aura. Let's just say this book doesn't have much plot. Those were really well written scenes. Unfortunately though, I feel really bad saying this, the book kind of was just okay for me. Like, the plot that we did get, I know that's not the point. That's not the point. It's like, okay, it's kind of the point too though. But that's what I want to talk about, because the author's note made me have a lot of appreciation for the story, and especially for Aura's character. it made me so emo. Author's notes. I think the main part of this book was the writing. I didn't like the writing, and it took me out a lot of the time from like the story itself. There's this whole like vibe thing where like every few chapters there would just be like this line that's like blah 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 blah, and she's my vibe. It was a vibe, and it's supposed to be this very serious thing about this instant attraction and this instant like soulmatey thing that they had for each other. It's just too funny. I think it's just because the word vibe itself is a very funny word to me, so okay. Anyways, I do really like Ruby and Aura's dynamic, and like I said, I had a deeper appreciation for the story after I read the author's note. I feel really bad though. I didn't rate it because I decided I'm not going to rate my dark romances. Like, content warnings for the entire duet, for sexual violence, sexual assault, and rape. Major, major, major. Like, explicit. Like, don't even think about it if you think that's going to upset you, because it's really bad in this book. I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which is the first book in the Folk of the Year series, trilogy. This is more surprising than me reading Vibe. Okay, I never really said it out loud, but I wasn't planning on reading this series because it just didn't seem like my thing, because for the longest time people make this series out to be this like enemies to lovers focused romance. Girl, what were y'all talking about? What were you talking about? Because the romance is very much a subplot. It is the subplot. I just needed some good YA fantasy, classic fantasy, okay? Jude's parents got murdered by this dude, whatever. He like takes her and her sisters to fairyland. That is not what it's called. It is called Elfheim, I think. Oh god, I'm so sorry. Well, yeah, fairyland. It's called fairyland, isn't it? It's just this other realm with all the fairies and such. And she grew up there. So now she's like a teenager, whatever, it's 10 years later. And all she wants is to be a knight. And she gets caught up in all these like politics. And it's really like a political fantasy. That's it. It's a political fantasy. I don't know, it's about like power. It's about power imbalances, relationships. It's really interesting as a fantasy. I'm like afraid to admit this. Jude and Carden's relationship, not convinced. I know I have 2 more books where they're actually probably going to like each other a little bit more. I understand it's enemies to lovers. Okay, I understand it. And I really appreciate how Holly Black talks about power imbalances and how, okay, well, I can't say that next part because it's going to spoil the book, but I really appreciate where she went in that direction, and then I also appreciate how Carden and Jude have an equal hatred for each other, and it's not just like this weird one-sided thing. But like the relationship itself, I'm not a romance gal, so you understand where I'm coming from, but you know, whatever. I'm not going to linger on that, okay? The fantasy itself was really fun. I love Jude as a character, because she's actually like her own person, and she's not just the lens, right? She's a morally gray character, and I said this in my TikTok review, but it made me reevaluate myself a lot, because I would have done the exact same things she was doing. I liked it as much as I liked the Grisha trilogy, and in case you didn't know, I really like the Grisha trilogy. 2 more books, guys. We're almost done. So then I read the second book in the Pandora's Box duet, which is Hush. This one was so much better. What's it called? The Vibe. Literally, like, this is like an author writing a book year 1. No, Vibe is like year 1. Hush is like year 5 into the writing career. It felt so different, and it was just so good. So this one is about Kay and Calypso. We kind of see them in one conversation they had in the first book, and Kay, we saw her a little bit more in the book 2. The book 1, what am I saying? Whatever. They also work at the club. And it's a childhood friends to hate, to love. It's so good. Because the tension is like there. And it's like some of the best tension that I have ever read about. Again, this one in particular, like, there is really no, there's a plot. It has more of a plot than the first book, but there's an equal amount of no plot. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Those scenes were really well written still, and it got to a point where, like, I was so into the plot that those scenes were interrupting the plot too much. I was like, okay, y'all, we just did this 3 chapters ago. Generally, I like really liked their dynamic too, more so than Ruby and Aura's. I just really like Kay and Calypso. I do recommend you read the first one before you read this one. I mean, you can read this one without reading the first one, but you'll have a deeper appreciation for what happens in this book if you read the first one, because Ruby and Aura too play like a major like side character role in here, and they're very present in like the second half of the book. And generally the plot is a low-key, like, a continuation from the first book, so, haha, yeah, it was, wow. It went in the favorite shelf, let's just say that. And then finally, yesterday, I reread Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is the first book in the Between Earth and Sky. I don't know why I'm feeling prompted to say the. But I don't know if you saw my annotations for the book the original time I read it, but I had like 10 sticky notes in there. Do you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that? This is like in my top 5 favorite books of all time. Our first story, or our first kind of plot, is about Shala and Serapio. And Shala is a pirate captain. Serapio is a crow god. Serapio is a crow boy, and Serapio needs to get to the capital city, Tova, on the day of Convergence, the Convergence Day, for his own, like, destiny, or his mission or whatever he's on. What is it called? Fate? What was that word they kept using? It's a very important part of this book. How did I forget? I literally read this yesterday. Anyways, you know what I'm trying to say. Shala is the captain, and yeah, she's there. They're kind of, each other's friends. It's really cute. It's really cute. I can't wait to read about them in the second book. But then the other plot that's happening is in Tova itself. We follow Naranpa, and she's the sun priest, and she's trying to reform the priesthood and the way that they are viewed by the people, because currently they're very inaccessible and they're kind of acting like gods themselves, and they're not doing their duty. And so she's trying to reform that, but she gets caught in these like political plots, and people are trying to battle her, traditional people, and she's facing assassination attempts too, and it's a lot of like politics on that end. And we also get this perspective from this, from this guy named Akoa, but he doesn't come until like halfway through the book, and I can't really tell you about him and why he's relevant. I don't really understand myself. Sorry. I love and adore every single character. I do not understand Naranpa slander. I am obsessed with her story as equally as I am obsessed with Shala and Serapio. I think a main critique of her plotline is that people say it interrupts the plotline of Shala and Serapio, because I think people have like a way deeper appreciation for Serapio than they do like every other character, which is understandable. He's a very interesting character, and he's very creepy, and he's very weird, and I love him so much. I love Serapio, I love Shala, I love Naranpa, I love Iktan. They are the love of my life, okay? And let's just say I was reading this book a little bit more thoroughly than I was the first time I read it. And I caught a lot more stuff, and now I'm depressed, and I'm confused, and I don't know what's going on. And that ending had way more of an impact on me. And now I have to wait till March for the second one, and I'm upset. So, why do fantasy series have me in their clutches right now? I was never supposed to be this person. I'm upset. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.